everyone, it's Meg, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys the top 20 books that I want to read in 2020. So this list is technically 21 books, I believe, but there are so many books that I want to read in 2020. There are 2019 releases that I didn't get to, there are some backlisted titles, there's some series that I want to read or complete, and also some books that are kind of a little bit more out of my comfort zone. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about them today, and I won't go through them in much detail just because there are so many books and we know how much I like to ramble. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So I'm going to start with the physical books that I have because I don't tend to buy books in bulk. Wow, words. So I only have two books that I have physically that I want to read, and the first one is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I feel like lots of people have read this book or at least heard about it, and it is a high fantasy, and fantasy isn't generally my genre. It's not my favourite. Contemporary is definitely my favourite genre, but I've heard so many good things about this book, and I did read the first chapter of it in a try chapter tag video that I did, and hopefully that will be going up at some point, don't know when, but at some point, and it really grabbed me in. So I really want to try and read more fantasy this year, kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit more, so hopefully this is one of the first books that I will read to start that off, and hopefully I will like it as much as everybody else does. The second book that I have on this list is Am I Normal Yet by Holly Bourne. I want to read this whole Spinster trilogy in general. I do have all of the books in this trilogy, but I got into Holly Bourne last year. I read Lemmings and Snowflakes, and I recently read Places I Cried in Public, and now I want to read more of her work. This is the trilogy that I'm most interested in. Don't know much about it apart from that it deals with feminism. I feel like it might deal with mental health as well, and I've really enjoyed what have been reading from Holly so far, so I'm looking forward to giving this trilogy a go. Now we're going to go on to all the books that I do not currently own but definitely want to try and get to this year. So next up on the list we have I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. I think that's how you say his name. And this is a book that has been quite popular on BookTube, and it seems right up my street, and I don't know much about it apart from the fact that it's about our main character who is non-binary, and then he gets kicked out of his house and he meets this boy, and that's kind of all I know about it. But I've heard amazing things about it and I really want to get my hands on it, so hopefully in the first part of the year I can get to it, as it is definitely one of the top books on this list that I really want to get to. Next up we have How It Feels to Float by Helena Fox, and again this is a book that I don't know masses about apart from the fact that it is about mental health, and I really want to start reading more mental health books this year so then I can do more videos on them, and it's just generally one of my favourite subjects to read about in a book, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one and hopefully I will end up really enjoying it. Next up we have a non-fiction book, which is Brave New Girl by Chloe Brotheridge, and I read Chloe's original debut novel, which was The Anxiety Solution. I read that one in 2018 I think, and I really enjoyed it, and this is Holly's second book and it is all about confidence, and like I said I really want to start reading more non-fiction, and my non-fiction that I personally like to read is more like self-help, self-development, and books about business to a certain extent, like kind of that entrepreneur sort of thing, since I am a business owner. But those are the sort of books that I'm into, so I really want to try and read more this year, and since I enjoyed Chloe's other books so much, hopefully I will really enjoy this one. And also it's about confidence, which is a very important thing, especially for me, because I'm not always the most confident being in the world, but you know, hopefully if I read this book it is going to help me out a lot, and it's also one that I want to try and get to in the first part of the year. Next up we have another book from Holly Bourne, which is How Do You Like Me Now, and this is her debut adult fiction book. And again, like I said, I want to read more of Holly's work this year. I want to read as much as possible and just read more UK YA and UK author books in general, and I feel like this is a book that I will relate to quite a lot, even though the main character is in her 30s and I'm not 30 yet, but I still think it'll be a story, like just the story in general, I'll be able to relate to it even though I don't know much about it. And yeah, Again, it's another book that I want to get to fairly soon. Next up we have Clean by Juno Dawson, or just in general any of Juno's books in general. She also has one of her other books I want to read is Meat Market, which is about the modelling industry, and I think Clean is about addiction. And she's got another book called Wonderland which is coming out, and that's kind of about gender identity and mental health. And I hear so many good things about Juno's books. They cover very important topics that open up a lot of discussion, like I said, such as mental health and addiction and identity. And I feel like I'm going to really enjoy her works, and like I said, I really want to read more UK author works this year, so hopefully this will be another author that I can add to my favourites list. Next up we have a poetry collection which is Depression and Other Magic Tricks by Sabrina Benaim. Hopefully I said that right again. This book and all of the other poetry books that I have on this list, or the majority of them at any rate, are books that I have wanted to read for ages, but for some reason I'm more inclined to buy novels instead of poetry collections, usually because poetry collections are more expensive for a smaller book, but like, that doesn't matter. I still really want to read all of these. I'm determined to read all of the poetry collections that I've been meaning to read for years, because I keep asking them for Christmas and then I never end up getting them. So it is one of my main goals this year to read all of the poetry collections that I've been wanting to read for ages. And I don't know much about this again. Obviously it's a poetry collection about mental health, which is the main reason why I want to read it. And I think Sabrina is a spoken word poet as well. I think I've watched a couple of her videos, and from what I've seen I've really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to seeing how her work plays out on paper, and hopefully I will enjoy it. And we also have another poetry collection up next, which is Plumbed by Holly McNeish, and this is another collection that I've been meaning to read for ages, ever since it came out. And again, I don't know much about it, but I feel like it's kind of involves like past and present, like her replying to poems that she wrote as a child. Like, that's kind of the vague concept that I seem to get, and I really want to read this because, number one, I want to read something from Holly and I've never read anything by her before, and two, because I feel like this will be a very good book to read for inspiration for a poetry collection that I also have an idea for, that I am sort of writing, but then again sort of not properly, if you get what I mean. But yes, I'm hoping that this will be a book that will bring about a lot of inspiration for my own writing, especially because it seems to have a similar concept to the book that I want to eventually write. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully finally reading this book, and hopefully I will really enjoy it. Next up we have a fairly recent release, which is Choral by Sarah Ella. And I haven't heard much about this book. I saw Jessie the Reader talk about it because it was a sponsored video about this book, I believe, or it was a book for a book club, something like that. But all I know about this book is that it's a 3-perspective book and it is about mental health. And one of the main characters in this book is a mermaid. And that sounds pretty darn cool, the fact that there's a mermaid and it deals with mental health. So like, it sucked me in. And like I said, want to read more mental health books, so this seems like a good one to add to the list. Next up we have another book that I'm really looking forward to reading, which is Mine by Emily Merrill. And if you don't know who Emily is, she is M from Little Writer M on YouTube, and I've been lucky enough to kind of get to know her a bit since starting my channel, and I really want to get to this book. And I know it deals with toxic relationships, I believe, and I don't know much more apart from that, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, and I'm so excited to eventually read it, especially after reading The Places I Cried in Public, which I enjoyed far more than I thought I was going to. So I'm really looking forward to getting to Em's book, and I'm sure I am going to love it. Next up we have another fantasy book, which is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. And this kind of blew up BookTube as well. I know a lot of people were talking about it and loving it, and I've never read anything by Margaret Rogerson. I know she has another book out called The Enchantment of Ravens. May get to that at some point, I don't know, we'll see. But this seems like quite a good book for people who are just getting into fantasy like me, and it's a book about books, so like, what's not to love? Next up we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and I have been meaning to read this book forever. It is the top classic that I want to read. I've read most of the classics that I've always wanted to read, but I really want to read The Bell Jar, and I just can't wait, because obviously Sylvia was a poet and this is her only novel that she ever wrote, and I know it means a lot to a lot of people, and obviously it's a very popular book and I feel like I'll be able to connect to it quite a lot, so I'm really determined to try and get to it at some point this year. Next up we have Autobiography by Christina Lauren, and again another book that I have been meaning to get for ages, one that is very well loved here on BookTube and in the book community in general, and it just seems like a really cute romance, LGBTQ plus romance, but also with a more hard-hitting side as well, as I know it kind of deals with religion, as I believe one of the main characters is Mormon. But yeah, again, it's just a book that I keep putting off and I need to read it because, like, I want to read it and I want to see what all the fuss is about. Next up we have another poetry collection, which is probably the one that I want to read the most and I put off reading the most, but I'm determined that 2020 is going to be the year to read it, and that is Please Hear What I'm Not Saying by Isabel Charlotte Kenyon. And like, I've been meaning to read this book ever since it came out in 2017, I believe, and like, honey, I need to read this book. This is a collection of poems which are centred around mental health, and I believe they're all written by different authors and it covers different topics. There is a lot of representation in this book, so I really want to read this, mainly for inspiration for my book and also because I love reading about poems and novels about mental health in general, and I feel like this is going to be a very hard-hitting, eye-opening and very relatable collection, so I'm really need to get my hands on it this year, and I really hope it doesn't disappoint me because I have been bigging myself up to read it for years, so like, hopefully the hype that I've built up for myself is a reality. Next up we have a very hyped release from last year, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and like, obviously I have to read this book. Everybody else has been loving it and I'm not always down for hyped books, but like, this sounds brilliant. It's about royalty and the president's son, and it's them having a romance, and it's new adult, which I've never read any new adult before, and yeah, I feel like this is just going to be a book that I really enjoy, so obviously it is on this list. Next up we have another poetry collection which came out last year, and that is The Girl Aquarium by Jen Campbell, and Jen is also a fellow booktuber and she is an author as well as a poet, and I've never read anything by her before, but this is her first like full poetry collection, like I said, that came out last year, and I just know it kind of centres around fairy tales, as Jen loves fairy tales, and I don't know more than that. I don't want to know more, and I just cannot wait to finally read it. Next up we have the final book in a series, which is Anne of Ingleside by Ellen Montgomery, and over the past few years, since maybe 2015, I have been reading the Anne of Green Gables series and I have been really enjoying it. The first and second book are definitely my favourites. I don't like the rest of the series, the other three books, nearly as much as I like the first two, but I'm really looking forward to finally finishing this series and seeing what happens, even though I have watched the original films or series, whatever it is. But Anne of Green Gables is one of my favourite classics, it's one of my favourite stories of all time. It's just such a heartwarming and wonderful story, and it's just, I love it so much, so I'm really looking forward to finishing the series, and then hopefully in the future I can go back and reread the series again, or my favourite books at any rate, since I'm not exactly a fan of some of the other books in the series. Next up we have a book that I have heard nothing but good things about from Hayley in Bookland, and that is Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins, and this was originally marketed as a book called Royals, which it's still marketed as that on Goodreads, but it sounds so cute. I don't know much about it apart from the fact that it's a royalty book again, and it's about, I think it's about this girl falling in love with a prince, like a common girl falling in love with a prince or something along those lines, and it just seems really cute and fluffy, and like I said, Hayley from Hayley in Bookland really enjoyed it. And the other book that is also a companion novel to Prince Charming is Her Royal Highness, and this seems to be Hayley's favourite book, and I must admit it seems like my fave, but I want to read Prince Charming first because I feel like you get a bit more of a benefit because some of the same characters are in it, and I know that this is a female-female romance with a girl from America and the Princess of Scotland, I think, in a boarding school, and it's a hate to love, and like this just sounds like such a cute story, so I had to read it, and I'm really in the mood to read like cute fluffy books right now, so hopefully this will be another book that I will pick up fairly soon. And the last book I have on this list, which again is probably one of the other ones that I am most excited to read, is The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill, and this is a super cute graphic novel. I've heard nothing but good things about it, and all I know it's like a magical book and it's about these dragons who make tea, and like it just sounds so adorable and I need to read it. And I believe there is also some LGBTQ plus representation as well, which is amazing. And yeah, like I just need to read this book. It just seems so adorable. The illustrations seem beautiful, and you could get merch with like little pins and stuff, and I really want the pins, but I feel like shipping them to the UK is going to be like really expensive. But I'm so excited to read these books, and like yes, I really want to get to this graphic novel soon because it just seems absolutely adorable. So there you have it guys, those are the top 20, but then again technically 21 books that I want to read in 2020. Let me know in the comments what are some of your top books that you want to read in 2020. Are there any on the list that I've mentioned that you also want to read, or any ones that aren't? Let me know in the comments because I would love to know as always. If you like this video then please make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more bookish videos from me, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you'll be noted every time I post a new video. As always, I will leave the links to my social media along with the links to my Goodreads in the description down below for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!